look at it. Okay.
Am I right? And we look forward to keeping that.
Word, welcome to the channel. Macron and Trump had a podcast about Russia, Ukraine, deals, lies. So let's check it out. Macron fighting for the people here.
They're going for a long period of time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. I want to thank Mr. President for his hospitality. We had a good discussion this morning for the G7 here and for the third year of this war in Ukraine. And I think our common objective clearly is to build peace and a solid and long-standing peace. And this is what we will discuss, obviously, because
Macron speaking up for Europe here.
Bravery and the resistance of Ukrainian people. And we do share the objective of peace, but we are very aware of the necessity to have guarantees and solid peace in order to stabilize the situation. I'm here as a friend because through centuries we've been friends, and we are personal friends, as you mentioned it, because we work very well together. And I think the US and France always stands on the same side, the right side, I would say, of history. And this is exactly what's at stake today. And this is a very important moment for Europe as well. And I'm here as well after discussions with all my colleagues to say that Europe is willing to step up, to be a stronger partner, to do more in defense and security for its continent, and as well to be a reliable partner and to be engaged on trade, economy, investments in a lot of topics. So I'm very excited by the discussion we will have, and obviously we will follow up. And I want to thank you again, Mr. President, for your presence for Notre Dame de Paris. It meant a lot for French people, and I want to thank you for that.
That's the cathedral, and they've done a fantastic job. The president's done a great job in bringing it back. That was a terrible thing, like, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Watching that burn was a very horrible sight, and you've done a fantastic job in bringing it back, so I congratulate you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody want to ask a question or two?
No Trump handshake there. Just the normal one. Marco Rubio on the
Looks like we're
side.
getting very close. The deal's being worked on.
Okay, now they get into the meat and potatoes. That's what we really care about, the Ukraine deals. So at the time I'm recording this, there's been a new deal that has been allegedly agreed upon by Zelensky. He's coming Friday. Today's Wednesday. Coming Friday to the U.S. to sign an agreement. Apparently, we'll see about that. We'll talk about what the initial deal was and the new one.
Getting very close to getting an agreement where we get our money back over a period of time. But it also gives us something where I think it's very beneficial to their economy, to them as a country. But, we're in for $350 billion. How we got there, I don't know.
All right, first slide by Trump. Oh my gosh! Also, Trump saying like, "Oh, this is a great deal for Ukraine." The initial deal for Ukraine was actually horrible. So complete lie, first of all, by Donald Trump saying that $350 billion has been given to Ukraine. That's not even true. It's around 117, somewhere around that. In part of Trump's demands from Ukraine was, hey, you need to pay back $500 billion, which Ukraine never even received that much. And secondly, it's not a loan. There were like $4 billion in loans, but like the rest of it was a grant. So Ukraine is not required to pay that back. And to think that Trump thinks that that's a peace deal and that's good for Ukraine is insane. So that's one part of the deal. Another part is that Russia they take out the troops, but they just get their land that they took from Ukraine. And the other part of it, this is saying the Ukrainian leader, who is under major pressure from Trump's White House, said Washington had supplied his country $67 billion in weapons and $31.5 billion in direct budget support through nearly 3-year war with Russia. So that's a little bit over. Actually, I don't think this is. No. There's more aid than this. There is some other aid as well. So it does get over 100, not here. But we did not send them 350. It's a lot closer to 100. Vladimir Zelensky responds, "You can't call this $500 billion and ask us to return $500 billion in minerals or something else. This is not a serious conversation." So straight up calling Trump a joke. Trump said he wants $500 billion in rare earth minerals from Kiev to secure Washington's assistance. And his team last week proposed a deal that Kiev declined to sign its current form. Yeah, of course. That was only one part of it, to repay $500 billion that you never received. And another part of it is that Ukraine takes ownership of 50% of Ukraine's minerals. Not a fair deal at all. Not a fair deal at all to Ukraine. Trump probably knows that. He's stirring the pot. I've talked about this before in one of the podcasts with Lincoln, but it seems like Trump has a pattern of his approaches to making deals, and it reminds me of a psychological term I know of called well, we've all heard of the foot in the door approach, which is you know kind of make people get a little bit of something so you can take a little bit more from them eventually. Okay, so you start with something small so you can get something big. There's another approach called door in the face approach, whereas you start with something large and absurd, like Trump is doing, and you get something smaller. Okay, so we'll talk about the New Deal a little bit, but absolutely absurd. Just lying numbers. Is it the door in the face approach? Is Trump trying to stir up the pot? But at least we can say that first deal is absurd, and Trump is lying about it.
Oh, but that's a lot of money, a lot of money invested, and we had nothing to show for it. And it was the Biden administration's fault.
Somehow blaming it on Biden already.
Europeans are in for about $100 billion, and they do it in the form of a loan.
That's also wrong.
And the Europeans have been great on this issue. They understood it wasn't fair, and we were able to work something out. But with the Ukrainians, I think I can say that we're very close. Scott's around here someplace.
I think this is where Macron steps in.
Hi, Scott. I think we're very close. Do you have something to say about that, Scott?
We were very close. The
Good.
1 yard line.
All right.
Mr. President.
What?
Would a middle deal include a security guarantee for Ukraine?
Well, it'll be Europe is going to make sure that nothing happens. I don't think it's going to be much of a problem.
So no security guarantee from the U.S. More so Europe stepping in, is what Trump is saying.
I think once we settle, there's going to be no more war in Ukraine, and you're not going to have it. It's not going to be a very big problem.
So another promise that is not going to be kept by Trump. Trump initially said he's going to end the war, not day one of his presidency, but when he gets nominated, he's going to call Putin and he's going to say, go home. Now he's on Putin's side.
That's going to be the least of it.
Mr. President, we're hearing some Greek media reporting that the U.S. has agreed to shut down a military base in Greece that's been a logistical hub for NATO.
That who shut down?
That the U.S. has agreed to shut it down at the request of Turkey and Russia. Is that at all true?
Marco, do you have anything to say about that? Please.
Mr. President,
Is it a no?
It's a no, sir.
It's not a correct statement.
Thank you.
Mr. President, how do you react to people in Europe who say that you are abandoning Ukraine and that you are going to sacrifice the security of Ukraine by making a deal with Vladimir Putin?
We're helping Ukraine like nobody's ever helped Ukraine before. And I can say this, if I didn't become president, the Ukraine would right now still be at a level where there would be no even thinking about a peace. And it's a sad thing that this happened. This would have never happened, this war, if I were president. Zero chance.
It's so difficult to listen to Trump when he can just sit there and be like, it would have never happened if I was the president. Yet he was the president when Crimea was being occupied by Russia. He did nothing then. So he hasn't been doing a good job overall.
And it has happened. So my function is to get you out of the war, get them out of the war, let them live. It's a bloody war. It's a horrible war. Thousands of people are being killed a week. And I would say Russia, maybe 700,000 people. I think Ukraine probably a similar number. And that's not talking about the towns and the cities.
Notice how he always addresses Russia in these as if, like, Russia is the victim. They're the one who initiated this attack. Trump will never recognize that at this point because he's practically a Russian agent, if not is a Russian agent. But he always likes to slip in Russia as kind of like victims as well, to side with them. They're the ones who invaded. We should be focused on Ukraine here because they are the victims. They're important in this conversation. Who cares about the Russian government? Not to say that everyone in Russia should die. Absolutely not. There are a lot of innocent people there. But it's just something to look out for, that Trump is always placing the victimhood on Russia a little bit.
That's talking about soldiers. This has been a horrible, bloody mess, and we're going to get it solved. We got to get it solved. And we're not talking about America soldiers from this country. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine. But on a humanitarian basis, we have to get this very, very bloody, savage problem solved. And I will say this also, it could lead to World War III if it's not solved. You know, there'll be a point at which it's not going to stop at those two countries. Already there's such involvement from other countries.
What would more so lead to World War III is that if we, let Russia's behavior go unpunished. Russia needs consequences. Yeah, they've been sanctioned. They need more sanctions. They need a violent amount of sanctions. They started this war. They should not have their economy is taking a hit. We can't let it recover because we're allowing this behavior to happen essentially under Donald Trump, and they're going to think, well, we can just do it again.
And it could really lead to a very big war, World War III, and we're not going to let that happen either.
Would you support the idea to send European troops in Ukraine to back the
Yeah,
ceasefire?
European troops may go into Ukraine as peacemakers. So when the agreement is done, they can watch that everything's followed properly. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And a lot of the European countries, I don't want to speak for France, but I know that the president's talked about doing that also. I think that'll be a very good day when we can go in as peacekeepers as opposed to what's going on right now with everybody being killed.
Will they have U.S. backing for the troops going into Ukraine? Will they have U.S. backing from U.S. troops?
Well, we're going to have a backing of some kind, and obviously the European countries are going to be involved. And I don't think you're going to need much backing. I think that's not going to be a problem. Once an agreement is signed, Russia's going to get back to its business, and Ukraine and Europe are going to get back to their business. I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Can you talk about Doge?
What? I will be meeting with President Zelensky. In fact, he may come in this week or next week to sign the agreement, and which would be nice. I'd love to. It'll be a deal with rare earth. I think they then have to get it approved by their council or who. I'll be meeting with President Putin also. Yes. I don't know when we speak. We're trying to get this thing worked out, but yeah, at some point I'll be meeting with President Putin too.
Yeah, so a little bit of an older conference there. Supposedly meeting on Friday, the 28th.
Monsieur Macron, s'il vous plaît, est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire quelques mots en français?
I can say a few words in French. No, le président l'a dit, je pense que c'est un moment important. C'est un moment important de la discussion. On veut bâtir la paix en Ukraine et le bilan qui a été rappelé, une réalité, il y a d'1 million de morts et de blessés depuis le début de ce
Captions
conflit.
not being very helpful here.
Je viens de dire, et campagne, il annonce le...
Est-ce que l'intégrité territoriale de l'Ukraine est encore un objectif
We've
stratégique?
spoken about this just a moment ago. This is exactly what we want to do. We want to build peace with Ukraine. As President Trump mentioned, there are already 1 million dead and wounded in Ukraine since the war began. We had a ceasefire in the past that was not respected. This was under the Minsk Agreements 1 and 2. President Trump, as he said, will be meeting with President Zelensky to sign a deal on rare earths, and we are pleased to see this very strong American involvement. Europe, of course, also stands ready to support Ukraine in various ways, supporting its military, and we don't want to preempt any sort of discussions that are currently underway, but we do share the same objective of building this lasting peace.
Okay, a lot of words, building lasting peace, but there needs to be a good deal with Ukraine.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking, and he really smart customer. I wrote that back the next day. And I read
Oh,
the
this is
paper,
so
and I
funny.
said,
Any physical interaction with Trump is hilarious.
"That's not what we said."
It tells a lot more than words. What are they reaching for?
Smart customer. I will tell you.
How would you
exactly what we agreed.
If the president called Zelensky a dictator, would you use the same words without Putin?
He's gonna say no. Look, his eyes just turned up. He's thinking in his head, shit. How do I get around this? Yeah, because he called Zelensky a dictator. Let's just be clear on that. Hold on. We have his. Is this the one where he calls Zelensky a dictator? This is not. I don't believe this is the one he calls Zelensky a dictator. Yeah, no, it is. Vladimir Zelensky, a modestly successful comedian, talked the United States into spending $350 billion, lied to go into a war that couldn't be won. They never had to start, but the war that he, without the U.S. and then Trump, will never be able to settle. Yeah, I mean, it never had to start, but Russia fucking started it. He'll never admit that. The United States spent $200 billion more than Europe. That's also not true. Europe spent more. And Europe's money is guaranteed, blah, blah, blah. Sleepy Joe Biden didn't demand equalization, blah, blah, blah. Zelensky admits that half the money we sent him is missing. So he's putting the blame on Zelensky there. Zelensky, in an interview, I think it was with Lex Friedman, was like, we were supposed to receive more money, but we never got it. And now MAGA is basically saying, well, what the hell did Zelensky do with it? Zelensky said, I never received it in the first place. So somehow they're already putting blame on Zelensky for that. He refuses to have elections. He's allowed to do that, and he's talked about that under martial law. Under war times, he's allowed to be like, hey, let's not do an election right now because people are fighting in the front lines. Thousands of people are fighting in the front lines right now. how are we going to vote? We are getting bombed. People are dying. There's a good chance that Russia, being so involved in the war, would also be involved in their elections, as they have been in the past. Um, so they need to create a safe space before elections, is essentially what Zelensky is saying there. And referring to Ukrainian polls, saying Zelensky is very low in Ukrainian polls, which is not true. Zelensky had in the last two polls 57, and in the most recent one 52% favorability, even in war times, which is awesome for Zelensky. More than Trump, 4% more than Trump. And the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. Biden was actually hard on Putin, unlike Agent Trump, um, calling Zelensky a dictator without elections, which is funny. Of course, Zelensky recently came out in an interview saying like, "Hey, if we can make a good peace deal, if we become part of NATO, I will resign as the president." Okay, clearly something a dictator would say. Um, and we'll never call Putin a dictator. He probably has in the past, but not anymore. Trump has nothing left to lose. Um, in the meantime, we're successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something I'll admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Yeah, okay. Um, anyways, let's get back to the video. Get past more of Trump's lies.
I don't use those words lightly. I think that we're going to see how it all works out. Let's see what happens. I think we have a chance of a really good settlement between various countries. And, you're talking about Europe, and you're talking about Ukraine as part of that whole situation. The other side has a lot of support also. So let's see how it all works out. It might work out. Look, you can never make up lives. The one thing you can make up the money, but you can't make up the lives. A lot of lives lost. I think probably a lot more lives than people are talking about. It's been a rough war, but I think we're close to getting it solved.
Question about Doge, sir. Do you think that Doge could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week.
They work for you don't even exist. So where's all that? We're actually going to Fort Knox. Actually, we did last week.
Their employees in communications.
Where they have very confidential things, or the FBI where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them. Where they're getting paid massively.
And America in NATO? Are you going
NATO
to
is
June in NATO?
saying that it's massively popular what we're doing. So.
Mr. President, do you still believe in NATO, in the alliance between Europe and America in NATO? Are you going
NATO
to
is
in June?
very much involved in this. When I first got elected at the very beginning, first term, I got hundreds of billions of dollars put into NATO. NATO had no money because they hadn't paid for years. And I said, look, if you don't pay, we're not going to be a part of NATO. We're not going to protect. We're not going to do what we're supposed to do. And we took in hundreds of billions of dollars into NATO. No, NATO is a good thing if it's done properly and if it's used properly.
Mr. President, in these days you speak a lot about the tariff for Canada, in Mexico, and in Europe. I want to know what is your idea in this
From Egypt, and she was on the country's got
Development transactions between the U.S. and Russia.
with respect to what, Russia?
In solving peace, we always said there would be major economic development transactions which will take place between the United States and Russia.
Yeah, we're trying to do some economic development deals. They have a lot of things that we want, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know if that will come to fruition, but we'd love to be able to do that if we could. They have massive rare earth. It's a very large, it's actually the largest in terms of land. It's by far the largest country, and they have very...
More than anything, Trump keeps talking about Ukraine's minerals. He's just so greedy.
Things that we could use, and we have things that they could use, and it would be very good if we could do that. I think it would be a very good thing for world peace and lasting peace. Well, I mean, our first, by far, our first thing that we want to do, the first element of the overall transaction is ending the war. But if, just as we're doing with Ukraine, if we could do some economic development in terms of Russia and getting things that we want, something like that would be possible, yes.
Can you explain the rationale, sir, in the U.S.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Can you explain the rationale of having the U.S. vote against the UN resolutions that Ukraine proposed and also the U.S. proposed?
I would rather not explain it now, but it's sort of self-evident, I think.
Yeah, Trump giving a non-answer because he can't. Yeah, I love when being the president, you're the spokesman for the people. You need to be able to explain things. You can't just make decisions and then be like, no, I'm not going to explain it to you. That's a huge red flag, and anyone who doesn't notice that as a red flag, be careful. Keep aware of them. Just because they become normalized, and we see them a lot now, people just don't want to answer questions. That's a huge red flag. Like the vote for the UN, U.S. was one of 8 who voted no against it, siding with Russia, North Korea, Saudi Arabia. It looks really, really bad for the U.S. So you need to be able to explain these things, and it's very fishy, very suspicious when Trump can't explain these big things. Classic Trump, avoiding talking about anything big and important, and distracting with smaller things and lies and stuff like that.
The President talked about increasing the tariffs on products from the European Union. Is that still something you want to do today?
Well, it's not increasing, it's reciprocal. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them. So it's not a question of increasing.
That's not true either.
Yeah, if they charge us 20%, we charge them 20%. If they charge us 30,
Oh, he's talking
40%,
about
then we do
the
that too. So that would be on the European Union, but that
tariffs. I thought he was talking about quote unquote loaning to Ukraine.
really would be with respect to everybody. It's reciprocity. So reciprocal, whatever they choose.
On the risk way?
I don't know, 9th of May. Right? Don't you think so? I'd like to ask, I think we could end it within weeks if we're smart. If we're not smart, we'll keep
I want to get to the juicy bit where Macron is correcting Trump here. I think it comes up at the end.
going, and we'll keep losing young, beautiful people that shouldn't be dying. And we don't want that. And remember what I said. This could escalate into a third world war. And we don't want that either.
Mr. President, your envoy Steve Witkoff suggested a temporary ceasefire in the conflict, but the Russian government has denied that out of hand. Do you worry that they're not dealing in good faith?
No, I think they, at some point, will agree to that.
Russia denied a ceasefire. Do you think they're, fighting in good faith? Do you think they actually care about peace? Clearly not.
And I think they probably wanted to. And I think once you have a ceasefire, it's going to end.
Yeah, if they wanted to, they would do it, Don.
Because they're not going from a ceasefire back to war. I think people have had their foe. I'm just glad I was able to help, because there was no communication with Russia until I came along. Biden didn't communicate. He couldn't communicate with his own child. So Biden didn't communicate. He couldn't.
Yeah, because you don't make deals with dictators.
It was terrible. He hadn't spoken to Putin in 3 years. You're trying to end the war. People are being killed. Every week, thousands of people are being killed. Soldiers, in this case, mostly. Also towns, as missiles go in and back and forth. No, it's a shame. This should have never happened. This is a very sad, this is going to go down in the history books. This is a very sad moment, because that should have been stopped. That should have never started. And if it did start, it should have stopped the first week, not 3 years later. Okay?
Je vais répondre, si vous me permettez. Juste, je pense que plusieurs questions de votre collègue qui ont été posées en français et qui rejoignent les questions posées par les collègues américains. D'abord, cette discussion est utile et construire la paix est une nécessité. La deuxième chose, c'est qu'il y a aujourd'hui une capacité de dissuasion qui est restaurée, et que c'est ce que veut dire le précis pour
Caption's not working, so we're gonna skip through this.
ce présent. Et je pense que chacun est dans son rôle. La discussion sont en train de finaliser.
Oh my gosh, some more awkward handshakes. This is so funny.
That is the most beautiful language. I have no idea what he's saying, but that is the most elegant, beautiful language. Go ahead, please.
Oh my gosh, so awkward. I think I think a lot of people said he's pushing his hand away, but I think Trump is just moving his hand a lot, and Macron's like, what the fuck? Probably just thinking like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
Elegant, beautiful language. Go ahead, please.
This is a question that was asked by several. What we need to do is make sure that we are building peace. We have deterrence capabilities that have been restored. As President Trump said, there won't be any more problems. We've seen the U.S. re-engagement and the message that sends to Mr. Putin. We have deterrence, which will allow a truce to take place, verification of that truce, and then a peace agreement can be put in place so we can start rebuilding Ukraine with security guarantees. And we have a role to play in that. Again, I'm not preempting any discussions, but we've spoken about Ukraine's sovereignty, and that has been a subject of discussion between the U.S. and Ukraine. We have also been working closely with our British partners this week. We've shared this information with other European countries, and we are ready and willing to provide those security guarantees, which could perhaps include troops, but they would be there to maintain peace. They would not be along the front lines. They would not be part of any conflict. They would be there to ensure that the peace is respected. Our assistance may include other capacity building, perhaps for the military. We see U.S. credibility here. We each have our role to play, but it will be done in a united fashion.
Mr. President, do you think that Ukraine should give up a part of his territory?
Well, we're going to see. It's a negotiation that's just starting, and they've been fighting. And
Are you gonna let them give up Ukraine territory? I don't know. Let's see. The answer should be no. No, that's Ukraine's territory. They should have it.
a lot of land that's been taken, so we'll have to see how that works out. That's part of the negotiation.
Oh my gosh, even negotiating with Putin, instead of saying, hey, Putin, you caused this, you need to give everything back and more, is what should be happening. That's why Biden, I mean, I'm assuming here, of course, but that's probably why there aren't any talks with Putin, because Biden and the Democrats are, more hard on Putin. They recognize him as a dictator, and they want to punish him. Trump doesn't want to punish Putin at all.
I will say there was great unity in that room today. Via Skype or whatever, but it was great, tremendous unity today in that room with the other countries.
Ukraine wants some territories back. Can they take it back? What they lost in the past years?
That's not an easy thing to do, is it? Right? It's not easy. Just asking whether or not you can take back the land that they lost. And I say that, yeah, perhaps some of it, yeah, I hope so. But that's not an easy thing to do.
Macron, on the frozen
It's going to
Russian
be something we're talking about.
Will you
Mr.
convince
Macron,
Vladimir
on the
Putin to
front-
accept European troops as peacekeeper? Do you think?
Yeah, he will accept that.
He will accept
I've
it?
asked him that question.
You talked to him?
I've asked him that question.
Is France going to lift the block on the
Because
300
he's
billion?
not, look, if we do this deal, he's not looking for more war. He doesn't mind, but I specifically asked him that question. He has
He's
no
not
problem
looking.
with it.
Is
He's
France
not looking for more war, but he only invaded a sovereign country.
to lift the block on the 300 billion in frozen Russian assets in Belgium? France has opposed unfreezing it to pay Ukraine and compensate the U.S. for its support. Is France going to lift its opposition to that?
This is, I mean, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7. And it's part of the sanctions, so it will depend on the follow-up of the discussions. But clearly we respect international law. It's just frozen assets now. You can take the proceeds of the frozen assets, but you cannot take the assets themselves because it's not respecting international law, and we want to respect
How is
international law.
one different than the other? You can take the proceeds from it. How can you not take
Because
the
it's very
assets?
different. You keep the assets, you take the proceeds because they are paralyzed in a certain way, you take the proceeds during the wartime, but you keep the assets, and it's part of the negotiation at the end of the war. Because, I mean, this war costed all of us a lot of money. And this is the responsibility of Russia, because the aggressor is Russia.
Should the
So,
US be compensated?
so at the end of the day, this
Macron could say it. He could say Russia's the aggressor here.
frozen asset should be part of the negotiation. All in all.
Will France support the U.S. being compensated?
I support the idea to have Ukraine first being compensated because they are the ones who have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by this attack. Second, all of those who paid for could be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.
Yes, exactly. Macron touching. Russia should be the ones that paying, not Ukraine, not the sovereign country that got invaded. The one who did the invading. Russia is the one who should be paying for all this.
Yeah, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their
That's not true.
money back.
No, in fact, to be frank,
Yes. Thank you, Daddy Macron.
we paid 60% of the total efforts, and it was
Yes. Macron saying we paid 60% of the total, which is accurate. Trump is trying to laugh it off because he's getting fact-checked in real time by another president.
through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money to be.
Yeah, so a couple lies here. Trump saying that he paid more, not true. Europe paid about 60%. And the U.S., he's saying Ukraine needs to pay back the loans. However, they're not loans, they're grants.
Clear. We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia will have paid for that.
If you
This is my
believe
wish.
that, it's okay with me.
Mr.
If
President,
they get their money back, and we don't, and now we do. But you know, that's
We will
only
fight
fair.
positive.
Mr. President, should be more
No, he keeps lying. He just keeps digging. That's Trump's thing. Never concede anything. Never own up to anything.
money. Is the one that pays everybody back? Are they the aggressors?
Well, we're negotiating everything, and everything's on the table, and we'll see if we can get some land back, and we'll see about a lot of different.
We're negotiating everything, just being extremely vague. Yeah, so just to be clear on this, Russia's the aggressors here. In Trump's first deal was totally over the top, not only unappealing, but just disrespectful to Ukraine, disrespectful to Europe. Russia's the one that needs to be punished. I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, like, just thinking about fifth grade behavior, if you let students act out, if you allow it to happen, they're going to continue to do that. They're going to think that's okay. Russia is invading a sovereign nation. Yeah, they're getting sanctioned, but there needs to be significantly more sanctions. They need to pay a lot more. They need to be punished aggressively, and that's not happening. So it's just normalizing this behavior for Russia. But let's take a look at this new agreement, supposedly that's going to happen on Friday between Ukraine and the U.S. Let's see. Okay, here are the parts of it. The governments of Ukraine and the United States, with the aim of achieving lasting peace in Ukraine, intend to establish a reconstruction investment fund, partnering in the fund through joint ownership to be further defined in the blah, 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 blah. Joint ownership. The fund will be jointly managed by the government of Ukraine and the U.S. Blah, 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 blah. Either participant will sell, transfer, otherwise dispose of, directly or indirectly, any portion of its interest fund without the prior consent of the other participant. Okay, so this is the 50-50. Yeah, they describe it here, but essentially the U.S. is going to get 50% of the mineral funds from Ukraine, but they can't just spend it left and right. The agreement is saying, okay, yes, you can get this money, but you have to agree to pay it to what we both agree on. 2, the fund will collect and reinvest revenues contributed to the fund minus expenses incurred by the fund and will earn income from the future monetization of all relevant Ukrainian government-owned natural resource assets as defined in Section 3. So most of it is going to go back into Ukraine. That's what they mean. They're reinvesting revenues contributed by the fund and will earn income from the future monetization of all relevant Ukraine government-owned natural resource assets. So they're putting money back into Ukraine, essentially. The government of Ukraine will contribute to the fund to 50% of all revenues earned from the future monetization of all relevant Ukrainian government-owned natural resource assets, blah, 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 blah. Here are the minerals and oil and all that. For the avoidance of doubt, such future sources of revenues do not include the current sources of revenues, which are already part of the general budget revenues of Ukraine, timeline and scope, and sustainability, blah, 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 blah. The fund in sole discretion may credit or return to the government of Ukraine actual expenses incurred by the newly developed projects from which the fund receives revenues, okay? May credit or return to the government of Ukraine. So once again, going back to Ukraine. Contributions made to the fund will reinvest at least annually in Ukraine to promote safety, security, and prosperity of Ukraine, to be further defined by the fund agreement. The fund agreement will also provide for future distributions. Subject to applicable United States law, the government of the United States of America will maintain a long-term financial commitment to the development of a stable and economically prosperous Ukraine. Further contributions may be comprised of funds, financial instruments, and other tangible and intangible assets critical to the reconstruction of Ukraine. The fund's investment process will be designed so as to invest in projects in Ukraine and attract investments to increase the development, processing, and monetization of all public and private Ukrainian assets, including but not limited to deposits of minerals, hydrocarbons, blah, 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 all that stuff. Basically, Ukraine is agreeing, okay, 50% of our money that we get from these sources, you're going to have some control of, okay? So the U.S. is going to be able to have a say in what that money gets reinvested into Ukraine. So that gives the U.S. a little more control over Ukraine. Overall, Ukraine's not losing money. They just have to put it to where they agree to, which might cause some conflict, might leave some money in limbo, I guess, if they don't agree on stuff. Normally, I say this is a really okay deal. And I say okay because I'm just thinking of like relative to Trump's initial deal, which is now I'm getting affected by the door in the face approach. Now this looks so good when it's really not all that good. It doesn't really do much. It just gives the U.S. a little more control, which normally I'd say like that's okay. Not right now when Trump is pretty much a Russian asset, vouching for Putin in as many ways as possible, treating Putin like a victim. So it's kind of doing something. The fund agreement will include appropriate representations of warranties, including those necessary to ensure that any obligations the government of Ukraine may have to third parties or such obligations that may undertake in the future do not sell, convey, transfer, pledge, or otherwise encumber the government of Ukraine's contributions to the fund or assets from which contributions are derived, or the fund's disposition of funds, just talking about the obligations and regulations of where that money is going and in terms of third parties, blah, blah, blah. We'll pay particular attention to the control mechanism. Okay, so a lot of talking, a lot of economic policy here, which, cool. I mean, you're coming to some type of agreement. Will this lead to peace? Will it be the end? Is Russia going to stop invading? I would really want to see something along the lines of Russia's going to pull out all their troops. They're not going to get their land. I shouldn't even say their land. They're not going to get Ukraine's land. Something along that line. Macron talked about, and Trump in that interview talked about the possibility of European troops going in there for peace, not for war, but for peace. in some way, shape, or form to keep the peace. Hopefully, Russia's troops, pull back, and now with the troops from the EU, they would have more protection, more involvement into NATO. At the end of the day, that's the most important part. The peace now for Ukraine and the peace in the future of Ukraine. Um, you know, giving up land that Russia has invaded would not be good. Um, haven't seen anything about that right now. We'll see what happens in the future. Um, First trial with the live stream and recording some current events. Here's some numbers on how much is the EU has paid just to get some confirmation. 145 billion, which is about 65%, whereas the US has paid 119. I said 117 earlier, 119. Um, so Trump keeps complaining about how much we're paying to Ukraine, and let's be clear. Look at this in the green here. That's military. Okay, the military resources that we give them is old military equipment that we would just recycle anyways. Okay, so this green is basically no cost to us. Okay, so the yellow and blue is the additional aid, financial and humanitarian, that definitely comes straight out of our pockets. That being said, 119 billion is still only 0.6 of the GDP in 2021 at least. So that's the GDP of 2021, but these numbers are of January 2022 to December 2024. Looking at Denmark here, doing a great job. 2.2% of their GDP. So they're contributing the most relatively speaking. That being said, theirs is a lot of military too, so I'm wondering if they're using old military equipment to send as well. That being said, still want peace, still want Trump to stop. Wanted to condemn Putin and stop treating them like the victims. But anyways, this is the first kind of trial run of what videos in the future might look like. We're going to keep up with the podcasts. In the past, we have done predictions of what's going to happen in Ukraine, Russia. So next week, we're going to record a video of what actually happened. So we're going to reflect on our predictions and see what happens. Friday, Trump and Zelensky are set to meet. Maybe they'll agree on something. Maybe we'll see some peace over there. I have some doubts. We'll see what happens, because you can never guarantee what Russia is doing when you're just making a deal with Ukraine. So let's see. We'll see next week. Thanks for tuning in. How the heck do I end this?